What's going on, everybody? This is Jeff with Living in Arizona, and today we're going to talk about Mexican drug cartels, the border situation along the Arizona border with Mexico, also what's going on with Nevada, Texas, California. So this is a really hot button topic, so much so that this is the number one most commonly asked question that we've never talked about on this channel. How influential are the drug cartels in Arizona? And if you are moving here, what are the odds of you being affected by the Mexican drug cartels and their power and influence that does at times tend to pour across the border? As you know, you tune into the news, you watch the presidential debates, you know that the border is a big thing. Border security, you hear it all the time. The wall, the wall. Why are they trying to build the wall? Why have they made such a big deal about it? Well, these drug cartels in Mexico are extremely powerful. You have the Sinaloa Cartel. You have several different cartels, but the Sinaloa Cartel, you might have heard of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. He's one of the primary guys that the United States has in custody, but his cartel still operates without him. When they take out a leader of the Sinaloa Cartel or any one of these cartels, it does affect their opportunity to do business and impact the American drug scene, right? So that's what we're going to talk about in this video. If you guys are excited to have this discussion, smash up the likes. What's up, Sean David Meister? And do subscribe to this channel if you like content like this. So the number one thing that the cartels are really good at doing is getting methamphetamine, fentanyl, and heroin and marijuana, cocaine across the border, even if there's a wall or border patrol along the border. This is something that the United States government has had to address because the amount of fentanyl that's coming across the border is deeply impacting American society. They've got to stop fentanyl. It's also coming from China. It's not just coming from Mexico. Some of it's even coming from China to Mexico to the United States. So just to give you some idea of some things that have happened recently, 42 bodies were found in a mass grave in Puerto Penasco. This was a big thing. People who used to go down to Rocky Point all the time are saying, hey, I'm not going down to Rocky Point anymore because they're finding these mass graves, which has happened with the Mormon family in northern Mexico. They got shot up. I think three women, three mothers, 5 children killed. It was a terrible tragedy. The cartel is supposedly behind that. But how does that impact Arizona, right? I mean, are you going to feel that every day when you're in Tucson or when you're in Phoenix or if you're in Sierra Vista or Nogales? And for the most part, you won't be affected or impacted by the cartel as much as it was impacting Phoenix in, like, say, around 2007, 2008, 2010. At that point, the cartel had gotten pretty strong in the sense that they were able to influence Arizona and influence the southern border pretty heavily. In fact, Arizona or Phoenix at some point had become the second kidnapping capital of the world. So this happened in around about 2010. John McCain had to address it. He said, Phoenix, Arizona is the #2 kidnapping capital of the world. So some of you guys have said, is Arizona or Phoenix really the kidnapping capital of the world? I mean, people were scared about that because of human trafficking, and not just the human trafficking, but the drugs that are involved. What's up, Cyclone? So yeah, we're having a conversation about the cartels, and in case you guys are just tuning in, since I see a lot more people joining in. Thank you to the 11 people who crushed up the likes. So what's the deal? How are they stopping the illegal immigration and how is the United States government doing this? Through the Homeland Security. So the Department of Homeland Security is committing to enforcing our immigration laws so that we can secure our border and keep the American people safe. So the objective here is to keep the criminal organizations south of the border from coming into the United States and wreaking havoc. I mean, it doesn't matter what channel you turn on, what kind of news research you do, you'll see that these cartels are so ruthless that if they don't like the dad, they'll go to the quinceañera. If you don't know what a quinceañera is a birthday party for a 15-year-old. They'll go to the 15-year-old's birthday party, kill women, children, innocent people because they've got a vendetta, or just like what happened with the Mormon family. So these things, imagine if these things were happening in the United States. We obviously have our own problems here with some mass shootings and stuff, but the stuff that happens in Mexico made Mexico actually one of the most dangerous countries on planet Earth. and it's just south of the Arizona border. So a lot of people got really defensive, and some people in northeastern United States, they're not impacted by what the southwestern states feel, like California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, because that's ground zero for the drug war. So if you're up in the north, you're not really feeling the impact that states like Arizona feel from the drug cartel. So sometimes you could almost say that Washington's been living in a bubble, completely unaware of just how serious things were getting on the border. And if you talk to most Border Patrol agents, doesn't matter who you talk to who's a Border Patrol agent, they will tell you that the cartels, in a way, they run that border. Until recently, the United States, or well, President Trump had to send the National Guard down there to go secure the border because the cartels were so powerful along that border, they were almost running it. It was almost a lawless environment where they were in charge. We're talking about the criminal organizations. And in 2020, that just wasn't going to fly. And so President Trump, he's come up with these tough words, tough things that a lot of people find offensive. But basically what he's saying in essence, if you go to whitehouse.gov, he's saying it is time to begin moving towards a merit-based immigration system, one that admits people who are skilled, who want to work, who will contribute to our society, and who will love and respect our country. So when he's saying a merit-based system, he's saying that means based on your character, based on your credentials, based on your resume, you can come into the United States. So he's not saying that people from Mexico can't come to the United States. He's saying that we need to get to a merit-based system, and we need to allow immigrants to come into this country, but we also need to have a secure country, and we need to protect the American people from the violence that is happening in northern Mexico or in Chihuahua or Durango, some of those other places in Sinaloa, and protect the citizens of the United States. Believe it or not, there are American people who are actually trying to fight President Trump on securing the border because they don't agree with it. Now, as a person who's been in Arizona for a long time now, that I find to be surprising. Why would you not want to secure your border? Especially if you know that it's dangerous. And we're talking levels of crime. Now, remember, America's not perfect, okay? We've got our own fair share of problems. But the stuff that's been going on in Juarez, Mexico, and south of the border, it's a big deal. And you've got to protect the American people from this. Otherwise, the American people, if it got too out of hand, they're going to come complaining and say, why didn't you do anything to protect us? I mean, it's pretty bad. Okay, so I got some comments coming in. Chuck Miller, I've seen Mexican federal police digging in wash a mile inside the United States border near Ruby, Arizona. I didn't know about that. Tracy Brooks, isn't Arizona an E-Verify state? E-Verify, I don't know. Is that like where you can apply for taxes online? I don't know. Jack Hammer Mike, I-8 corridor is deadly. That's the corridor that goes from Gila Bend through Yuma all the way to San Diego. I've been on that. I don't know how deadly it is, but I know that those two border crossings from Tijuana all the way through till El Centro are considered the most heavily crossed border crossings. I've actually crossed in Tijuana. I've crossed in also south of Ajo. If you go down to Arizona or down to Mexico through Arizona, you'll go through Ajo and Y, and then you'll come into a small town. And there's a border crossing there. There's also one in Nogales. Let's see. I-19 is the pipeline from Nogales to everywhere USA. Oh yeah. Well, I think I know there's a freeway that goes from Mexico all the way to Canada. Is that I-19? I think they're building I-19. Yeah, I think they're building onto I-19 actually. Troy Browning, without the Second Amendment, the drug cartels would be killing just as many as in Mexico. So yeah, I mean, back to the conversation. Do I feel like living out here in Southeast Phoenix that the cartels are running the show and that there's this? Absolutely not. No, I mean, it's safer in Phoenix, and I think right now, currently, it's safer in Phoenix than it has ever been in the last 20 to 30 years from at least the cartels. Now, I mean, you flash back to the early 2000s, late 90s. I mean, it was a lot crazier than this. So I don't know if that's because the government's done a good job of cleaning up the show, but I mean, from what I understand, the cartels are just as powerful. I mean, they've taken Acapulco pretty much out of the whole equation. When you would go to Mexico, there was a couple places that people would go. They would go to Puerto Vallarta, they'd go to Acapulco, and then came Cancun in the late 70s and 80s. And then they would also go to other places like Playa del Carmen, which is basically Yucatan, Cancun. Well, nowadays people don't even go to Acapulco. Acapulco is part of the Mexican Riviera. It's this beautiful place. Heck, Bill and Hillary Clinton had their honeymoon or wedding, I believe, in Acapulco. Nowadays, the drug cartel runs that place. Cancun was under threat from the cartels running that place. Rocky Point right now, a lot of people are scared to go down to Rocky Point because they hear stories about, in case you don't know what Rocky Point is, that's Puerto Penasco. That's just up there on the northern point of the Gulf of California. But people don't want to go there because, you know, those mass graves that were found where 48 people were found in, or 42 bodies were found in mass graves right next to the resorts in Rocky Point. But people don't go down there because the cops will pull you over, or people that will dress as cops will pull you over for things that you didn't even know were crimes or traffic violations. And they'll tell you basically, give me money now, or I'll take you to jail and you can pay there. And so you're like, I'll pay 1/15 the price, get off now and not have to go to a Mexican jail, or I'll go to Mexican jail. So what do? You give them the $50 and they let you go, or you challenge it and then you get in an argument with this guy who you don't know is a part of the cartel or whatever he's doing, or if he's just a corrupt cop, but he's trying to cite you for a traffic violation for running through a stop sign or kicking up dust in a village. So people are scared to go down to Rocky Point now because they've heard stories like this from their friends who've had this happen. And Rocky Point was Arizona's beach for the longest time. I mean, it still is, but this is why people are scared to go down there. And so you can tell the cartels have they've sunk their claws into even a place like Rocky Point. The challenge is that the people who own the resorts, sometimes they're also associated with the cartels or the organized crime group. And so they'll tell the cartels, hey, back off the tourists because we rely on that money. So it's so you get this kind of thing where every once in a while they get a wild hair and they want to go after tourists. And sometimes they even go after tourists in small capacities or larger capacities all at once. But whenever that word gets out, it's kind of like what happened in Dominican Republic. Remember, all those people were dying from drinking something in Dominican Republic, like they would fall sick and then within a day they would die. And then people were like, hey, something's going on in Dominican Republic. Don't go there because people are getting really sick and they're dying like instantaneously. Same kind of thing with Mexico. I mean, now I personally love Mexico. I go to Mexico. I've been going to Mexico all my life, really. I've been to Puerto Vallarta. I've been to Cancun. I've been to Tulum. I've been to Playa del Carmen, Cozumel. I've been to Rocky Point more times than I can even count. And it's a shame that, you know, these cartels are so dangerous. I've been to Tijuana, Ensenada, Rosarito. But, you know, when you're down there, you feel it. You're kind of like, it's safe, but then you're like, it's not safe. And then you're like, so there's this element. And you feel that in American cities at times where you can tell that there's some organized crime going on and it's not so safe to go into those pockets of places. Oh, thank you to 16 people who crushed up the likes. We now have 72 people watching. Jack Hammer Mike says, too many shootouts south of the border. Yeah, there is. Jackie Blue says, I'm terrified. It's too bad. Really enjoyed Rocky Point. Yeah, people don't really want to go down to Rocky Point anymore because they're concerned with the cartels, because they're hearing stories about the mass graves being found. They're hearing stories about people being pulled over and being threatened to go to Mexican jail for running through stop signs. So they're like, well, I don't even want to drive down there because if I'm driving, they might pull me over for something that I didn't even know wrong. And it's Mexico. It's a whole nother country. If you haven't driven to Mexico, it's not like the United States roads, okay? Things are going to be in Spanish, and they're also going to be like, kind of like, it's like, which way is this a one way? Is this like two directions going? And what are we doing here? And so, you could just be innocently breaking making a traffic infraction, getting pulled over. And I've been pulled over in Mexico by someone who didn't even have any markings on their car. Like it didn't say Policia, it didn't say Federales. It was just some guy. He actually had like a glass eyeball in one eye and a regular eye. And he like pulled me over and he was like telling me I kicked up dust. He said he was pulling me over for kicking up dust on an ATV that I rented in the dunes. And he basically said, and I was just a kid, I was under 18. He was like, he scared me. I was scared because he had, you know, he was like I didn't know if he was a cop or if he was serious or not. I gave him $10 and he let me go. So I mean, they don't even care if you're kids or not. I mean, seriously, this was when I was under 18. I was maybe 14 or 15. So he wanted to tax me $15 or take me to jail for kicking up dust in the dunes. Yeah, signs are in kilometers. So, you know, when you're down there, you're going to want to make sure you're going the speed limit in kilometers, not in miles per hour. Chuck Miller, that guy, no guns allowed in Mexico unless you are a cartel. Yeah, you don't. There was actually an American Marine who went down to Mexico. He brought guns, and Mexico, they arrested him at the border and they detained him for like months on end. He was in Mexican jail for a long time just for bringing guns down to Mexico. So if you think you're going to take your guns with you down to Mexico, think again, because they will put you in jail. For real. Don't take your guns down to Mexico. Don't work like that. In fact, a lot of it, I'm not saying you can't go down to Mexico. I'm not trying to scare you like that, but I do know that if you try to drive across the border with guns into Mexico, it's not the same law. So don't try it. Let's see here. Janny Hollis, hello from the island of Bermuda. Hi there. Sorala Roos, hello from Argentina. Michael Klein says they do allow the Mormons to have guns too. Well, I don't know how the gun laws are in Mexico. I mean, if you're going to have guns, if you're going to be trying to just go down there without any sort of permission with guns, it doesn't work like that. I can tell you that right now. Troy Browning, I believe 45% of all Americans are doing illegal drugs. Americans doing drugs are funding the cartels. We need the border wall built and protected, like 60,000 overdose deaths in the USA. Way too many. Yeah, I mean, that's too many. I mean, it's the fentanyl is the big one. It's that opiate. And I don't even know, do they grow poppies and opium in Mexico? I know that the poppy fields in Afghanistan were a large producer of opium, but how is Mexico getting its hands on so many opiates? Or is fentanyl not made from opium? It's just a synthetic. I don't know. What's going on, GMC Chevy Santa Cruz? Geronimo's Bones. Build the wall. The CIA will just drone their dope over it. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, there's this argument that if you build the wall, they'll still tunnel over it. They'll still, well, he's saying the CIA. I'm not going to get into that. But, you know, the Mexican drug cartels will find a way to get the border, the drugs across. I mean, we've seen stories of, you know, them putting drugs, okay, I mean, in people's butts, put them, you know, swallowing the drugs and then, like, you know, regurgitating them afterwards. But that's small amounts. I mean, but then again, they'll do it to where, like, they'll pretend like they're coming across the border with pork, for example. So they'll be like, we're shipping pork, but then inside the bellies of the pork is a ton of fentanyl or methamphetamine. So I mean, they do figure out ways to get around, you know, getting across the border. Dorothy Doroska says fentanyl is an opiate derivative, lab produced, no plants needed. Okay, thank you, Dorothy, for clearing that up. Jack Hammer Mike, they busted a couple of submarines like a week or two ago. Yeah, that's another thing. So here's an article on the Epoch Times. Mexican cartels absolutely control the southwestern border, says the sheriff. So every time politicians and media discuss border security, one particular group of people is paying close attention, the Mexican cartels. So when the American government is going back and forth about what they should do to stop the influence of the organized crime in Mexico, the cartels are listening and seeing how much the Americans have their finger on the pulse of what's going on. So because across the border in Mexico, we have a complete organized criminal business of trafficking humans and drugs into the United States. And Sheriff Andy Lutterbeck of Jackson County, Texas, the cartels absolutely control the southwest border, he said. So this is the thing. Washington, D.C. is not listening to the people on the front line right there on the border. This is a sheriff who works the border right there on the, I mean, this is a Texas sheriff. You have Arizona sheriff saying the exact same thing. I mean, they're saying the cartels run the border. We need support down here because they're running away with this thing here. And some people in DC try to say, no, 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 no. And they're saying, hold the phone. This is serious. Every day, every minute, some penetration of the Texas border, California border, New Mexico border, Arizona border. Every minute, someone is preparing to send a load in to traffic humans, or some type of criminal activity is going on. Every minute of every day. That's their job. That's what that's what they're committed to do, and that's how they get paid. And that's what we're up against. So what they're saying is that if the economy in Mexico is not very strong, people turn to these cartels. Even good people turn to cartels because they got to pay, they got to support their families. So they'll join the cartels and they'll do their dirty work, whether it's trafficking humans or drugs or whatever it may be. I mean, it can get to a certain point, you don't know, terrorists or whatever. I mean, here's what the cartels control: the trafficking routes through Mexico and the entry points or plazas into the United States. They also maintain drug distribution cells, designated cities across the United States that either report directly to TCO leaders in so Mexico or indirectly through intermediaries. According to the Drug Enforcement Agency, DEA 2017 Drug Threat Assessment, the cartels are also known as TCOs, or transnational criminal organizations. So different cartels control different areas along the southwest border. For example, the Sinaloa Cartel is dominant in California and Arizona, whereas the Gulf Cartel reigns supreme in the southeast Texas. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty serious what the Border Patrol is up against and has been up against, protecting and securing the border from. So the human trafficking they're talking about is people, they're called coyotes. So what they'll do is they'll load up the vans and they'll try to bring these people in, or try to get these people with children across the border. And then what ended up happening was they discovered that there was like a loophole. So they discovered that if they brought children, whether it was their own child or not, this is kind of where the kidnapping comes in. So these coyotes were taking children, sometimes not even their own children, and they were just bringing them across because they discovered that if they said, this is my kid, that they would get an easier treatment, and then they would get sent back. Well, what happened was the American government caught wind that people were using children, and then so they had to kind of get tough on it. And what ended up happening is now there's this controversy that they're incarcerating young innocent children. The scary thing is that these kids are caught in the middle of it all. So the kids are being used as a decoy or as a tool for the cartels to do their criminal activity. And they're taking kids that might not even be theirs. These innocent kids are caught in the crossfire, sometimes 7 years old. And what happens is the coyotes will be trying to smuggle these kids across with the adult that's not even theirs, maybe sometimes, because they're just trying to get a better deal out of it if they get caught. And, sometimes they're finding kids with adults dead along the border. And human rights activists are saying, I can't believe you guys are doing this, but it's a lot more complex than what you think, because the main conundrum here is kind of if you don't draw the line in the sand, then they'll continue to do it. So if they don't draw the line in the sand, that means that the word gets out, hey, steal a kid, try and come across the border. So then what happens? They start stealing more kids because they're like, we get a better deal if we steal a kid. You see what I'm saying? So it's kind of like you gotta really know what you're talking about before you get too deep into that. Anyway, so let's see. I have a question. Why, after we commit a crime, they don't give opportunity to get your life back on track? Why the gov don't help you to start life again, even if you have your education done? Yeah, I mean, there's some people who talk about rehabilitation, right? Where instead of throwing the book at someone, try to rehabilitate them and bring them back into society instead of just being so quick to just punish them and throw the book at them. That's a good point. I mean, that's a more humane way of law enforcement. The thing is, does that always work? And where will people take advantage of it? Because people can play the cards. I mean, it's such a slippery slope, but I do agree that people deserve second chances, third chances in life, and that we shouldn't be so quick to just off with their head for things that could be rehabilitated. Troy Browning, failed U.S. justice system. Years before any trial takes place, no real punishment. Give them bail bond, they disappear. Yeah. Mr. Cyclone. Hit likes, guys. This channel is great. Hey, thanks, man. Mike Pfeiffer, have you been to Rocky Point since you've been here in Arizona? We used to go a lot. Haven't been in a while, but thinking of going again. I haven't been to Rocky Point, but in August I went down to Cancun and Tulum and all that. Wow. I would have to say that of all the places I went to, the two most dangerous places I went were Brazil and Mexico. It's just something that you feel, I don't know if it's just like in your mind and it's a subconscious thing that's ingrained in you. Like I said, I love Mexico. I love the food. I like the people. I think it's a beautiful place. So it's not Mexico. It's just the safety, right? It's like looking over your shoulder. If you go there, you don't want to have to look over your shoulder. You don't want to feel like, it's dangerous. No one likes that. But in Mexico, there is this element, even in Cancun, but I haven't been to Rocky Point recently. My brother, he did recently go down to Puerto Penasco in July, just about 4 or 5 months ago. And, he came back safe, sound. I mean, let's see here. Mike Pfeiffer, don't go. You will have your head chopped off. Well, I'm not gonna agree with that, Chuck, but because you can go down. I even went down to Puerto Vallarta. Both places I went to by myself, Puerto Vallarta, and I went to Cancun. Came back, no problem. Okay, but like I said, I do look over my shoulder more than I would like to. But just like my grandma, she's like doesn't want me to go down there because she knows I go down there by myself. Or when I went down but no one said anything about Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. But I was like, I think Rio is a little bit more dangerous than even Mexico in some regards. But Chuck Miller, we got robbed on the way back by fake police last time I was. Don't go there. Yeah. So, Chuck Miller has had an experience like that. Mike Pfeiffer, I loved going there. I just have family defined thoughts now that I have a family. Okay. Those mass graves were Mexican nationals. But still, like Jay says, you have to be careful about your surroundings. Yeah, you go down to Rocky Point, a lot of places in Rocky Point that people go. Choya Bay, you have Las Conchas. Las Conchas is where all the resorts are. Then you have the that little bay inlet where you can go get oysters on the beach, and you eat the oysters. They shuck them right there for you. The tapatio, it's great. I love it. You get a Pacifico and a lime, have a shot of tequila, put some salt, blah blah blah, and drive back into town, go down to the fisherman's wharf, go down to the fish market, hang out, buy some stuff, chill out, go for some drinks and some tacos, maybe even go out deep sea fishing while you're down there, go down to JJ's Cantina, Choya Bay, all that is great. But it's got some problems. So GMC Chevy says, they're saying GMC Chevy saying if you don't work with the cartels, if you're not there buying drugs, so if you go down to Mexico and you try to buy cocaine, you try to buy marijuana, all that junk, you try to do that, you're interacting with cartels. So just be aware of that. But he's saying if you're not doing anything to interact with cartels, they probably won't mess with you. And that's kind of what the point of this video is like how much do the cartels affect daily life down there. And there is some truth to the fact that if you're not doing business with the cartels, they won't mess with you. You won't even know they're there. Sometimes you might see some elements of it, like foot soldiers, or the bosses. What do they call those? Like the Dons, whoever they are, like the El Chapo Guzmans. You don't see those guys, the shot callers, the Pablo Escobar kind of guys, right? But they have these foot soldiers. And those are the guys, they're basically out there conducting activities. They're basically out there running their own organized crime unit, whether it's like patrols or smuggling, whatever. They're just trying to do business. Tourists, you're not in their crosshairs unless there's like a gunfight that breaks out right next to where you're standing. That's what he's trying to tell you. What are the most dangerous places to live in Arizona, and are they getting worse? The most dangerous places to live in Arizona are probably South Tucson, and around about what's that area down there by, like, I would say off I-10 around about. So if you go to I-10, you go west of Central, that's where it kind of gets a little bit iffy. What is it? I know that area. It's like basically 7th Avenue all the way to like 50th Avenue, or from around the whole area, like a square area of I-10. And then North Phoenix has an area that's pretty iffy from like Bell Road, basically probably 7th Street all the way to like 20th Ave, from Bell Road down to like Sunny Slope. It's kind of iffy in that area. But it's weird because you got nice houses there in this little area called Moon Valley. So every once in a while you get these like gated communities up on the hills and the foothills, but down when you get down into the foothills, you get into like the areas that are not so great. And it's just mostly drug activity. That's pretty much what's driving it. And remember, what are we talking about? Mexican drug cartels. That's the whole name of the game. But they're also into human trafficking. Yeah, like Maryvale area. Nelson Hall says Mexico is relatively safe, and there is some truth to that. I've watched several YouTubers who live in Mexico, and they said that it's safe. I've been down there a couple times, haven't had any real issues. But I think probably the craziest thing I did when I was down there, where I was like, why did I just do that? Was I was down in Puerto Vallarta, in Nuevo Vallarta, and I was getting a taxi down to Puerto Vallarta. And what I did was I kind of gone out into the town. I was just walking on foot, and I decided to flag down a taxi cab. This is for some reason, use Uber, right? But I just flagged down some regular old car. He stops, and then I got in the taxi. I was like, this guy's not a taxi. I'm like, I'm in a car that's not a taxi. And so I was like, okay, how do I get out of this guy's taxi? So that was on me. That was just a bad decision. Now he let me out of the car. I gave him some money. And I was like, oh, thanks for the ride. Like I was like, oh, just drop me off right here. But then I got dropped off right in the middle of like somewhere in between Nuevo Vallarta and Puerto Vallarta. Reason I did something stupid like this because I had too many shots of tequila. I just wasn't thinking straight. I was just getting carried away. And then I ended up in an area where I was like the only gringo around. And like I went into a barber shop, and I was like, and they were like, we don't see gringos around here. They didn't say that, but I was like, okay, how do I get out of here? So I had to find like another taxi cab that was no joke a taxi. But these are decisions that I made that, I was looking back on. I was like, that probably wasn't that smart, to be honest with you. Oh, yeah, the area is called Tolleson. 43rd Ave. Tupac Shakur says 43rd Ave and Thomas. Let's see. Troy Browning, if you think south of Tucson, think south of Los Reales Road. South Tucson is considered like South 6th and Ajo Road area. So there you go. You're talking South Tucson. It's like South Phoenix. I mean, South Tucson, South Phoenix. For whatever the south sides of the Phoenix and South Tucson are the dangerous places. It's you'll be rolling down the road, and they'll be like, "What you looking at, homie?" And you'll be like, I ain't looking at you, man. Like stuff like that, just like dudes looking for problems. And how do I know that? Because I've had that happen. And we were just cruising through the streets, and I was just like, and it was middle of the daytime. It wasn't even at night. I was like, dude, I don't know if you should come down here at night. My friend, he used to work. He had his dad. His name's Abel. He's from Gila Bend, and his brother, or this guy John, I used to work with their dad, and we would go down to, we were working for this company that furnished schools. So our job was to go in there and build the furniture for the schools. Like we did Julio Cesar Chavez High School down there in that area of like South Phoenix. And so when we were working down there, we would work with what's called temp workers. So they would hire temporary workers, and you get all types of different temp workers down there. So as a kid, I was, 16 years old working with temps, waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, showing up to work at 5:30 because it was way down there. I lived in North Phoenix. We had to drive all the way down to Cesar Chavez High School. And we would go down there, we'd build the furniture, and we'd get off at like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. But, being down there, we would play basketball in that area, and we would go hang out in like these areas around there. And it was kind of iffy. I always remembered like that place it's not like where I was living up in North Phoenix. It was kind of like one of those places you kind of had to watch out what you were doing. And I talked to the people. I got along with them. Like these people that were living down there, they're nice people. There's nothing wrong with the people that live down there. It's just a tough area. You got these tough knuckle, hardcore areas where there's some people doing some stuff. Most of it's drug activity. I mean, Most of the temp workers were on some sort of, I mean, you'd be working with temp workers who had, you know, bands on their arms while they were working with you. As a 16-year-old kid, I'm like, why you got a band on your arm? Did you get blood drawn? And then one of the guys goes, no, they're on heroin, man. They're working for the temp agency. They're on heroin. But I'm just saying that that's the kind of stuff you get down there. Okay, I'm not going to talk about some of that stuff. Some of you guys are saying some stuff like conspiracy stuff. We don't talk conspiracy on here. Kidnapping is or conspiracy theory. Well, a conspiracy is crime, right? But conspiracy theory that involves we'd stay away from that. What high school did you go to? We're about the same age. I went to Greenway. I don't want to tell everyone in the world where I went to high school, not because I'm worried about it, but it's just because, you know, I don't need to. I'll tell you on another time. You can message me, man. I'll tell you where I went to high school. It was north of Greenway, though. I'll say that. Those folk thinking about relocating to Arizona don't. Famine is coming quick. Arizona cannot support outsiders. California is where you want to be. Okay, so you're talking about the water shortage or the food shortage. Thanks to the 37 people who crushed up the likes, we had almost 92 people watching. Now we're at 88. So thanks to everyone who crushed up the likes. I would like a video about how taxes work in Arizona. We moved this year to Goodyear. Oh, hey, and Barrera. We did make a video about that about last week or so. It's called Paying Taxes in Arizona. If you go to the channel, we've got a lot of videos on there, but we did do a video on paying taxes in Arizona. And thank you for that recommendation. So I might make another one here soon. Felix L. Chingon says gun laws are very stick. Only 22 caliber are legal and bolt action rifles. Anything else is almost impossible to apply for. You're talking about in California and Arizona. Troy Browning, you're safe in Arizona as long as you're not doing drugs. There is theft, but rarely violent crimes towards random individuals. Yeah, you'll see on the news, like there was this one story that happened just down the road about 7 months ago where this guy, he had an injury on his leg. So he's wearing a cast on his leg. And I guess some guy, this is what the guy said in the report. This is a total random attack. So it was at night going to Walmart with his 4 kids. He had a cast on his leg. Some guy shot him because this is what the guy said. He said his mom and his grandma had casts on their legs, and he thought the guy was involved in his grandma and mom having cast on his leg. So he shot the guy like 8 times. Can you believe it? Just because he had a cast on his leg, he thought that he was so the guy was obviously suffering from mental illness. Now that could happen anywhere. I'm just saying that there are random attacks, unfortunately, that do happen out here. Let's see here. GMC Chevy Santa Cruz. You think AZ is racist? I don't think AZ is racist any more or less than anywhere else. I think that like you're talking about racist towards Hispanics or Mexicans who are coming from Mexico to the United States through Arizona, living here. One thing that I would say to any of the Arizona locals is respect people from Mexico, because you don't know who built all these communities. These are built by Mexicans. Like all these homes and all this, if you go to any one of these job sites, there's mariachi music going. There's Roach Coaches selling Mexican food, burritos and whatnot. And so to use them for their labor and then say, oh, to hell with you, that's so inappropriate. That is inhumane. So I think most Arizonans get that. And most of the people that I talk to, when we have the conversation about Mexico, I think it's more or less about the documented crossings. There are some people who work in, say, carpenter trade or construction, who in the 90s, their jobs were good and they were getting paid maybe $40, $50 an hour. And then when during the Bush era, a lot of people came across the border because the economy went south in Mexico and they started looking for work up here. They started making, $10 to $15 an hour. And then so what ends up happening is the carpenter who was getting paid $40 to $50 an hour, now all of a sudden he's not finding any work because those companies are hiring people from Mexico for a third of the price. And so that creates a resentment saying, hey, stop them from coming over the border because they're stealing my jobs. So then that could sound like a racist comment, but what they're saying is these people from Mexico are coming across the border taking the jobs because they don't want to hire me anymore. So it's affecting their bottom line. And in life, you mess with someone's money, they're going to complain, right? Like, I mean, there's a couple things you don't mess with people: their family and their money and their wives, you know. And so when you start affecting their money, they start finding out what's the culprit, and then, you know, they start pointing the finger, and that's the kind of stuff that you see. So here's N. Barrera. I haven't experienced any racism in Arizona so far. I moved from South Central PA. Yeah, I mean, I'd say Mexicans in Arizona are just about as normal as any gringo, any white guy. I mean, you know, to me, you don't even think twice about it. If whether they're Mexican or white, you just don't think twice about it. The only time you might see a little bit of a difference is if someone doesn't speak any English. Then you can see I would say that, you know, that's not very fair to not like someone because they don't speak the same language. But if you're Hispanic and you speak English pretty good or even moderately good, you probably won't feel anything. But if you don't speak English, there might be some people who might be short fused with you or short tempered and be like, oh, I can't talk to this guy. He doesn't speak anything. He doesn't speak English, you know, and then you'll feel like that's kind of like rude or racist. But if you speak English, you know, you probably won't ever see any problems ever. I mean, I can't really think of anyone or anything that I know who's going to be like, oh, that guy's Mexican, don't talk to him. I really don't know anyone who does that. Toronto's bones, race poof. What did he say? He said, we just don't cotton to those devils in the flesh of men. Okay. I don't know what that means. Toxic opinions. When I become 18, I want to move to Arizona. Okay. Cartels are powerful, but only under the oil cartels. Felix El Chingon said that. Anthony Ramos Quinones. I don't hear a lot of people speak Spanish openly. It is shunned in AZ to speak other language openly. No, I don't think it's shunned. I don't think it's a big deal. I mean, I like people from Mexico. So whenever I see them and I know that they don't speak Spanish, I'll try to talk to them because it's a chance for me to brush up on my Spanish and talk to them. And they're usually very meek. They're usually very respectful. They're humble. You know, we're talking about people who don't speak any English. They're not coming here with a arrogant attitude anyway. So I find it really easy to get along with people who only speak Spanish that are from Mexico because they're very meek and very humble anyway. So I enjoy the interaction personally, and I think most people probably do. It's just if you're like at a grocery store or something and you see that there's this was a time when I saw something kind of weird. So this guy, he was a laborer. Like, you could tell he had just worked a very long day doing construction out in the field. Whatever he does, maybe he's when I say in the field, working out in the daily grind of construction, working on a house or whatever he does, landscaping, who knows. He didn't speak any English. So he's at the gas pump. He's trying to get his gas to go. And the cashier, who's already short fused always, every time I go there anyway, like they're short fused with me too. He doesn't have the patience to try to understand what this guy's saying. But the guy's trying to tell him his card doesn't work when he puts it in the machine. And the guy's like, I don't know what you're saying. I don't know what you're saying. So I went to the guy and I said, what are you trying to do? And then I was able to kind of translate, but I could tell, I was like, the guy at the cashier was kind of rude to him. But, you know, so you do see kind of that stuff. And if I was the guy, the Mexican guy who was just trying to ask him how to pump the gas, I might have taken that as like a rude bigot or something. Tracy Brooks, what percentage of AZ population is Black, American, or African descent? Probably around about, I think it's around about 10%. In some areas of Phoenix, you'll see more African Americans, and then like in the rural areas of Arizona, you won't really see like Flagstaff doesn't have very many African Americans. But if you go into, I don't know, like Scottsdale or Tempe, maybe 15-20%. You know, so it just varies on what area you're talking about. Joe says, hey, I really like your channels. Thank you. Styles says, a smile can usually go a long way. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't. as someone who travels around, the world and whatever, and I go to China where I don't speak any Mandarin, I go to Vietnam, I go to Philippines, I go to Singapore, I go to Dubai, I don't speak their languages. Even when I went down to South America, I know what it's like to not speak the same language as the locals. And actually, when I go to like South America, I hardly even talk to anyone because they didn't speak the same kind of dialect. I would speak to people, but maybe like 5 or 10 people a day, like have a conversation with or attempt to have a conversation with, because in South America, they don't speak any English. So I know what it's like to not speak the language and have a communication barrier where you're just trying to say, hey, where's the bus? Donde eres un buso a la, I don't know, Buenos Aires? So I mean, I know what it's like to not speak English. It's not easy to just pick up a second language. If you think that just because someone's coming from across the border, they can just instantly show up here, even if they're working they might be a good worker. They might cook your food, they might build your homes. But then they're getting discriminated against because they don't speak any English. So what I'm saying is they're putting in an honest day and they're not getting any respect. I don't know. I agree with the fact that, we need legal documentation, but I also don't agree with the fact that people who are honest, hardworking people should be feeling discriminated against because they don't speak English, even though they're working honest and, trying to be a good person. Because almost all of Americans, unless you're Native American, your family came here as immigrants, whether you came from Poland or Ireland or wherever. And, so many of you are not too far removed from that second, third, fourth, fifth generation. So, I mean, I think a little bit of having compassion for people from Mexico who are coming here just because they don't speak Spanish, I think that would be a good thing. Nelson Hall, the vast majority of any race people belong to are good people. It's just the 1% to 2% of people of each race who are ignorant. Oh, there's ignorant people. Yeah, there's ignorant people. I mean, Phoenix is not immune to ignorant people. We have ignorant people that live here and that are bigoted and will say racist things. But that does not, they're not speaking for me and they're not speaking for the majority of people here. So just because you hear one person spout off or one group of people say some really dumb things, ignorant things, doesn't mean they're speaking for the whole Arizona or the whole Phoenix. And you're going to have those, like he said, in every race. There's going to be people like that. And they don't have any power. Like bigots and racists, they don't have any power anyway. I mean, they might think in their head that they got some power, but they have no pull. Geronimo's Bones. Most black folk in central northern Arizona are Rastas, musicians, artists, and students over in Flagstaff. Okay. What is this? Negotiator. Be kind and respect others will go a long way no matter what race you are. Yeah, I mean, it goes back to hospitality. I mean, I go down to Mexico, I get great hospitality. I've had Mexicans hook me up with chicharrones, beer, tequila for free. Rides, I'll be driving in the shuttle. And in Mexico, you could drink in the car. And, the guy in the shuttle, he's like, hey, you want some tequila? Open up that ice chest right there. Get what you want. I'm saying, like, so I've had great hospitality from people in Mexico. Yeah, sure. There are some bad actors. There's bad people. Like there's bad actors in America. There's bad actors in Mexico. Doesn't mean everyone from Mexico is going to chop off your head or try to sell you drugs or is a drug cartel member. That's the point. Don't generalize. That's the whole thing. Like you could go down to Mexico, have the time of your life, have great friends, make great friends, come back, want to go back again. One bad time, you get pulled over by some bad actor, some guy who decided to pull you over for no reason, that kind of stuff. It might leave a sour taste in your mouth. But you got to remember, not all of Mexico is like that. Not all of Americans are racist, that kind of stuff. T. Jackson, where is a good, safe town to move to in Arizona coming from East Coast with lots to do? Oh, lots to do in the town. We don't really have lots to do in Arizona for recreation. It's like Houston, Houston, Texas. You go to Houston. Houston's a great place to live, in my opinion, but there's not a lot to do in Houston except for go to a Rockets game, go to an Astros game, a Texans game, maybe go down to Galveston. That's about all there is to do in Houston. But Phoenix is like that. Go to a pro sports game, go to a concert, and then we have like some aquarium that's okay. I mean, it's like one of those aquariums you go to once, you're like, okay, I don't need to go back there again. Called Odyssey in Scottsdale. A lot of people go to casinos. We go to a lot of casinos out here on the reservations. That's a big thing. Going out to bars and stuff. People go out, to the bars and the clubs. That's a big thing to do on the weekends. Get together with your friends. If you're religious, people go to church on Sundays, and then they go to church like a lot. They do things with their church. And Barrera, changing topics. I noticed, or I don't feel the holidays as much as if I were in the East Coast, or is it just me? I don't know. Yeah, the holidays like Thanksgiving. I mean, I saw in my neighborhood, we had all the Halloween stuff out and about. I mean, my neighbors were putting like, jack-o'-lanterns and stuff like that. Is probably not as festive as like Boston or wherever you're coming from in Philadelphia. But come Christmas time, I mean, Phoenix gets going. I mean, Arizona gets going for Christmas. You'll see your neighbors will have lights up. I mean, they'll be like, it gets going. We won't get any snow. If you're looking for snow, no, we won't get that. But everyone puts up a tree. So I don't know. Oh yeah, people are already doing Christmas. They don't really. What's the decorations for Thanksgiving though? I mean, putting up a little turkey and putting up some fall leaves and stuff like that. People will do that, but that's about it. But Christmas, people get pretty festive here. New Year's, they'll go down to like downtown. They'll go to Rio Salado. They'll go to some of these bars and stuff. It's pretty good. T. Jackson, Gilbert was one of my choices. Thanks, Nelson. Yeah, Gilbert. Yeah, okay. You asked where the best places are, the safest places. Scottsdale, Gilbert, Chandler, Queen Creek, Peoria. Buckeye's pretty safe. Maricopa's pretty safe. Florence, pretty safe. North Tucson, Catalina Foothills, Oro Valley. You can write them all down. Prescott's pretty safe if you want north. Payson, Sedona. Let's see. Christopher Brett Sherman. I'm looking for a storefront with living spa above any recommendations. Oh, living space. I thought you said spa. What is this? I'm looking for a storefront with living space above any recommendations. Oh, yeah, I've heard about that in like New York. They have like you can have an office and I don't know what's wrong with a home office. Get a big house and get a home office. You can do that. T. Jackson, I love your channel. It's my go-to for my Arizona move. Keep it up. Thanks, man. Negotiator says Safford is safe. So Safford, there you go. But Safford's really small. There's not much to do in Safford. Nelson Hall, Arizona may not seem as enthusiastic about Christmas because of almost no snow. Well, we get tons of snow in the White Mountains and Mogollon Rim and Payson, Prescott, Flagstaff. We get tons of snow up there. You can take the whole fam bam all the way up to Pine Top Lakeside, and you will be in knee-deep snow on Christmas Day with pine trees and all that. It rarely is it not snow on the ground up in northern Arizona in those high country. You go up above 7,000 feet, Flagstaff, 7,000 feet. That area there, Christmas, you get real Christmas up there. Yeah, you got hail. Hail's not snow though. Hail's just like hard rocks, golf ball sized cloud dookie. I don't know what else to call it. It hurts, man. You get hit with hail. Those hails will hurt your car too. Christopher Brett Sherman. I plan on selling high value antiques, so I really want to be as near as possible. Okay. Yeah. Go to Scottsdale or Tempe. That's probably good. Yeah, it was interesting to see hail. I mean, I kind of like. I don't really like monotony with the sunshine all the time. Like all of October was all of November has been October and November has been mostly blue skies, no real weather. We did have weather like 3 days, right? But for fall, 3 days of weather, that's it. September we had that, like that late monsoon, if you want to call it that. but like the monotony of the blue skies and everything, I like variety. I like sometimes getting a monsoon or getting like a little bit of snow here and there, or heavy rain or flooding or flash flooding. It's not like it's not going to like ruin your house kind of flash flooding. That kind of stuff I don't want. I don't want the floods that are going to come into my house and my neighbor's houses and like ruin our community, like what happened in New Orleans. No, I'm not saying that. But like when the roads like really turn into kind of rivers and all the soot and sedimentation and the dust and the rocks get all flushed out down into the culverts, I like that kind of rain. Troy Browning, retail spaces everywhere, no shortage of it anywhere. Catalina and other towns have built retail space. Yeah, you could get retail space probably around Tempe or Scottsdale, a little bit more expensive. But if you're going to Chandler, you're going to Peoria, retail space. It just depends what area you're trying to go to. Selling antiques. I'm not an antiques dealer. I don't know much about antiques. It's a good industry. My mom knows a lot about antiques. She always had our house fully decorated in antiques. Me, I don't do antiques. Anthony Ramos Quinones. I had expected to see scorpions, and I have not seen one yet since I moved in June. Yeah, some neighborhoods, like 2 miles that way, he gets scorpions all the time. He says, yeah, like 20, 30 scorpions he saw this summer. I hadn't seen one. We're within a 2 mile distance. Scorpions are not something I want, though. I'm like, I'll take that. I'll take that any day of the week to not have any scorpions. I haven't seen any scorpions. Okay. I've seen ants. I've seen mice, but no scorpions. Noel Ebert. I love antique stores. It's actually a problem sometimes. Yeah, some people love antiques. Like I said, my mom, she loves antiques. I know about, maybe that's why I don't get it too big into antiques, is because my mom was always, she had an antique store just like you. T Jackson, thank you so much. That was my fear. Yeah, I mean, if you're worried about scorpions, you just ask the landlord or whatever, say, hey, do you guys get scorpions here? They'll tell you. Well, thank you to the 52 people who crushed up the likes, 88 people watching. We've had over 100 people watching this at one time. That's a lot of people. Thanks to everyone who crushed up the likes for that. Negotiator, go to Globe, Arizona for your antique store. Yeah, if you're trying to do, are you trying to sell or are you trying to buy? If you're looking to buy antiques, go up to Globe. Globe Miami is going to have antiques, really good Southwestern antiques. You go to Tombstone, you get some really good antiques. Go up to Prescott, you'll find some really good antiques if you're a buyer. And then you bring them down, you sell them in your store. Tombstone, Bisbee will probably have some. Superior, Safford, Morenci, Sierra Vista, that whole area. Negotiator, downtown Prescott for an antique store. There you go. Noel Ebert says, yeah, I like scorpions, snakes, and nature, so it's kind of funny people ask that question. Well, if you like scorpions and you like snakes, okay, you could probably find that. Just ask the landlord, say, hey, I like scorpions and snakes. Do you know where I can find that? Does your apartment or does your home have that? They'll tell you. I don't know if you're joking or if you're serious. Thank you, Jackie Blue. Old skillets, lanterns, stoves. Chuck Miller. Yeah, I hear you on that. Noel says, I mean, what state doesn't have poisonous animals? I don't want those bastards in my house. I just like them camping and stuff. Yeah, except for when they're in your sleeping bag, right? All right, guys. See y'all later. Thanks, Jackie Blue. And this has been going on for an hour. Great video we put out. Good information. Overall, I would say the Mexican cartels are not going to affect you here in Arizona. I know that we didn't talk about that the last half hour, but it's not going to be a problem for you here in Arizona for the most part. But we spoke about that in the first 20 minutes of this video if you missed it. So we'll see you guys later. And thank you to everyone who's been liking and subscribing to this channel.